Promove edição especial virtual. Realização e promoção. Patrocínio. Apoio. Apoio institucional. Parceria. Parceiros de mídia. Assessoria de imprensa. A logística e a transformação digital integrando negócios.
Hello. Those of you that are watching us, welcome. Here, live from Expolog 2020 studios, we send you a virtual greeting. Our entire audience in Ceará, Brazil, and the rest of the world, watching the International Logistics Seminar in this very special edition, 15 years, the main theme, Logistics and Digital Transformation, Integrating Business. We'll launch Panel 3. The theme is Cabotagem in Brazil, New Public Policy. Let's see who our speakers are.
Well, we're opening the panel 3, inserting the 15th Expolog. First of all, we would like to highlight the Expolog staff. So because of this, another realization of this very important logistics event inserted in the national agenda and with international repercussions. Well, we're discussing today a very current and impacting theme with this perspective of the recovery of the economy, and nothing more important than the aqua transport. So, cabotage in Brazil, a new public policy. We'll have the honor to have here Professor Mr. Dino Antonio Batista, so Secretary of the Port and Maritimo and Aquatic Transportation of the Ministry of Agriculture, of huge experience in the important name, logistics and infrastructure. We'll have us to debate. We'll have Mr. Abrahão, Salomão, Director of the Aquatic Transport and Logistics of Brazil, of the Brazilian Association of the Users of Transport and Logistics, Mr. Carlos Alberto Nunes of Terseg and Termarco, one of the pillars of Expolog, Dr. Adilson from Unilink Transportes, Dr. Luis Fernando Rezão, representing the Brazilian Association of the Cabotage ship owners or freighters, Dr. Gustavo Costa, researcher and academic and consultant of the maritime and aquatic transport, Dr. Miguel Haddad, the director of infrastructure of the DOCAS company in Ceará. The methodology will be an exposition from the speaker, 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll 5 minutes each one to interpret and to discuss what they get from the lecture from the speaker, and then a third, another reply, and then a the final remarks. And then, with no further ado, Dr. Dimas Batista, please, the floor is yours. Dino Batista. So I would like to thank you, Heitor, for this invitation for the Ministry of Agriculture by Expolog. I think all these events happening in logistics, they are benefiting with this possibility we have with this digital format. It's making easier our connection, bringing us lots of benefits. And in this sense, I'd like to thank Expolog for this new opportunity. This program of stimulus to the cabotage delivered by the government 3 months ago. It's a law project delivered to the National Congress, and then since then we've been participating of other various events. I think I am in my 30th event to discuss the so-called the Sea Coast Highway, or BR DOMAR. So all this process of this Sea Coast Highway, that's very important for the Brazilian logistics. So the first meetings about this Sea Coast Highway are from February to 2019. So the process of public policy construction, we followed a very well-known methodology with gathering all the propositions, and we started this public policy agenda in February. And by the middle of 2019, we've gathered together a list of proposals, of instruments we understood would be fundamental to give this incentive to the Brazilian cabotage. So the Brazilian cabotage, it's been developed, developing in the last few years. We've had an increase of more than 10% in average per year in the last 10 years. So we're having a very interesting response from cabotage, and I would like to award the private initiative for this achievement. But unfortunately, cabotage and all Brazilian navigation, they have the private initiative as protagonists, and we are happy with the results delivered by the companies. Obviously, it's a very unequal cabotage, unequally distributed by the types of cargoes, or the wet bulk, especially fuel. So cabotage inside the value chain of the oil value chain, it finds a great example of efficiency in the whole logistics chain. And obviously the fact that we have kind of a verticalization in the oil field, so it made it easier, logistics, and that's what we've used inspiration to emulate this development from the oil chain in terms of efficiency, mainly. Well, as I said, by the middle of 2019, we've gathered together some propositions, and we returned to the society, civil society, lots of stakeholders, for example, with ship owners, freighters, doctor, for example, all the ABAC associates. We've had lots of opportunities with ship owners, not part of the Brazilian Association of Ship Owners. I would like to mention Dr. Abrahão, Salomão, one of the ship owners that are not associated to ABAC, also Yucano, leadership, and we tried to converse with all the stakeholders, all the cabotage providers, and also with the users, the customers, or clients. Remind you that the focus that we are searching for efficiency for the final user. So we talked to the Brazilian Navy, naval industry. So we did a very broad discussion, and then we finalized the design of this project, the so-called Sea Coast Highway. And then we've got hit by the pandemic, and so some delay was presented in the delivery of the law project to the National Congress, but we are trying to mitigate these impacts, and we are resuming the discussion within the Congress, and we believe that this law project will be enhanced. We are talking with the congressmen, with leaderships, senators that are getting ahead of the debate. So it's been a very rich moment about our program. So, and I would like to remind you that this law project is the peak of importance in the Sea Coast Highway. Within the Sea Coast Highway project, we've finalized some actions. For example, in November or October 2019, we had a decision from the International Commerce Chamber that we've lowered to zero, so the taxes upon the ships, specific ships for cabotage. We were trying to discuss possible impacts that it may bring to the navigation, to the dock support, maritime support. Even because all the ships, they have other kinds of problems that demand other kind of discussion. And I publicize the BR. We have the Sea Coast Highway, but we'll also have the Rivers Highway as another program similar to the Sea Coast Highway, to the countryside navigation. I hope that by the middle of the next year, we may be together in the same format discussing about the river highway. Maybe not with this name, but the similar intention to bring development to the countryside navigation. As I said, we finalized these actions regarding the ships' taxes, and we started a discussion inside the CONA portals. We created a specific cabotage technical committee to discuss the impact of red tape on and trying to test this within the committee inside CONAS, brought some elements about the bureaucratics, about the red tape, but a major part of our works regarding this we have tax, so-called ICMS, average of 50% on activity. We've had a reduction for 12% in the Santos port within the state of São Paulo, but we are trying to articulate and to try to give support and to try to discuss with the states that are protagonists inside the council called COFAS that may allow us to have a covenant, COFAS covenant that allows the states to reduce the state tax called ICMS, to reduce this tax or even to lower it to zero. And in the last 3 months, we've discussed it a lot with the states, and I hope in the next months we can establish for good this covenant of COFAS. To address the market distortion because the ship's fuel in the long course is free from the ICMS, but within the cabotage, we have the obligation of distribute this tax, the ICMS, and we have some difficulties that sometimes foreign ships that do not fuel in Brazil, so they have some cost differential because sometimes this ship bunker are not taxed because they do not fuel in Brazilian territory, so they may offer cabotage operations, a cheaper cabotage operation than the companies in Brazil. So these 3 pillars I've mentioned, so the import, ship tax, the actions to fight against red tape with the technical committee, CONAPORTOS, and the articulations regarding bunker, regarding fueling. So these actions make part of the program for the Sea Coast Highway that we have in a law project delivered 3 months ago. So we have these 3 pillars are the core of the Sea Coast Highway, and this core is a result of diagnosis we did in the last 2 years, full diagnostic on the cabotage market, in which we did some differentiation of all the segments of cabotage. For example, the containers cabotage is different from bulk cabotage, that is different, which is different of the project loads. So we have a need of regularity that is very differentiated. For example, in the containers cabotage, this need of regularity made the market to structure itself with the operation of ships with Brazilian flags. Almost 100% this container transportation is made in ships of Brazilian flags, or freighted or owned or freighted by the ship owners. We have other trades of different market. We have bauxite specificity, other dynamics with salt, other totally different dynamics with oil. So cabotage is being configured in Brazil according, obviously, with the demand characteristics, and also obviously with this law 9432, the Brazilian act that rules the Brazilian navigation. So, and this Sea Coast Highway establishes hypothesis of the nude hull, or regarding the hull, regarding the time travel, and also the freight by time travel, in which you keep the flag, the origin flag. So in this case, you have the differential of costs between the Brazilian and the foreign flag. So we have a cabotage market. So accepting the container where you have a need of irregularities, like a city bus line. It's interesting that we've been criticized because we did this comparison with the public transportation, the container cabotage, and that's exactly what's being done in Australia. The same comparison is being done, and non-container cabotage we have the a major presence of the freight ships, where we see this behavior from the market players for the maximization of foreign flags. So with all this analysis, we understood that we should work on the hypothesis of freight to allow companies that in some situations they could perform their freights in time, not passing through the circularization. That is no more that question we do to UNTAC. May I freight it? Does someone have a flag, a Brazilian flag? Because we have the right of way to the Brazilian flag, and when we have no Brazilian flag ship, the answer from UNTAC for those who claimed so is yes, you may contract a freight. So, and then the market configured to this time freight and a travel freight that led to a behavior from the companies so towards circularization. So we understood that we have lots of situations that where we do not should not have the need for circularization. In, for example, in a long-term contract, when the client, they may well do something for their own to make an agreement, and this agreement will mean the head regarding the volatility. In other words, in the situations, so in the cabotage situations, and so in another situation, when we have with no owned ship, and also I remind you about the possibilities about the hull type 1, so free of ballast, or ships under construction, whether in Brazil, whether abroad. So our proposition brings lots of possibilities of freight that frees the ship owner from what we call the ballast of ownership. And this itself is interesting. So these are measures that improve the competition potential in the market, and that's why I think because of this group of measures that the CAD assessed that the Sea Coast Highway has this potential. They believe it will bring a more competition to the cabotage market, but with all these measures, we understood that would liberalize the market. So we expose the Brazilian cabotage market regarding the international navigation market. So we understood that is fundamental to bring some measure to incentivize the fleet formation. So also comparing the Australian experience, Australia freed 100% the cabotage, and with some bad repercussions, especially because we see in Australia and the national Australian fleet is almost zero, but today they reverted this liberal policy, and they try to attract companies inside the country. And then we understood that we should have some measure to incentivize a national owned fleet. So one of the hypotheses stated is the access to the time freight contracts based on owned ships. So we put together measures so the whether hull, whether freight or time freight. So with owned ships, stimulating the Brazilian competition, and another hypothesis to big incentive to the formation of fleets that we imagine that will work in the medium and long term. We are aiming in a medium and long term public policy. Obviously, we have another elements in the we understand the measures are secondary. The main actions are about freight, and I would like to call the attention these freight contracts, time freight, that we have a concern regarding this exposition to the foreign market. So we don't want people from abroad just being so foreigners. So, and then we have in this a figure of the we have subsidiaries. We'll have subsidiaries, national subsidiaries of international companies. So in order to keep the control of the navigation on the hands of Brazilians and not only to outsourcing our navigation. And just to finalize these other secondary measures in the law projects, they concern a new hypothesis of the bond account. We've created a Brazilian company of navigation investments. We created the market of countryside navigation, and well, we've had some feedbacks from foreign companies saying that yes, we'll try to enter as freighters in the national market. So it's a group of actions that today I have no doubt talks with senators, congressmen. I've been doing a very deep discussion about the project, and I have some critics that some make sense, and other critics they do not make sense. For example, from the truck owners, the truck companies, they criticize us, talking that the cabotage, the sea coast highway, will end 40% of the road transportation. So some myths. Our minister says that people who talks about this must be 100% disinformed to talk this nonsense, because considering our logistics, mainly from the countryside to the coast, when you assess the grains or mining transportation, or even also value added products. So the major transportation is intra-regional transportation. So when we assess all the possibilities for cabotage increase, our goal is a bold goal. So we intend to double the amount of containers, transported containers in cabotage, elevating to 2 million of containers in cabotage. So in terms of tons, this is not 1% of the Brazilian whole transportation. So it's nonsense to discuss the impact on the truck owners, on the truck transportation. So we should discuss the positive impacts for the truck drivers, since these long distance transportations are those less profitable for the truck owner. So when you do cabotage is multimodal. You need to connect two tips, the origin and the destination tips, creating a huge market for the truck owners. That is the last mile market that's so much more profitable. So I think sometimes we joke around saying that these critics are from the truck owners that are not willing to come back home, but we have other critics concerning the competition. For example, Dr. Salomão are following us. He's been stating lots of critics in this sense, but when we receive feedback, we receive all these feedbacks, but from the feedback we've got from CAD in a whole, so with all the measures, the Sea Coast Highway will represent an increase of transportation with cost reduction and increase in the competitiveness. So that's what has been assessed by CAD. I think that's all. I am very happy to talk about the Sea Coast Highway. I thank for the opportunity again, and I'm at your disposal to discuss, to debate, and to answer questions. That's the beauty of democracy, to be able to discuss all the elements that are put to Congressman approbation or approval. So thank you, Dr. Dino. So as lectured by Dr. Dino Batista, we see all the impacts, all the goals. So it's very impacting. It's necessary. We have very low index from the aquatic transportation, and we must advance on this, but with no doubt it's fundamental, it's necessary to this incentive to cabotage, to infrastructure development, and also our competitiveness and final price, to foster development and job post generation. So we have in the Congress, we have a report of 112 amendments, some of them secondary, but we have some concerns, some doubts about the 2/3 of tripulation, the hull freight, or some incentives to, for example, companies that are not obliged to have their own ships. Well, I'm sure all these questions will be made by our debaters here, and I'll call by alphabetic order, calling in Dr. Abrahão Salomão, that may have 5 minutes to put your remarks, and then Dr. Dino will answer, and by the end we'll have a final round. Pass the floor to Dr. Abrahão, and thank you for the opportunity. I greet you all. It's an honor to be here with you. Dino, it's nice to see you again. So I'd like to say that the Infrastructure Ministry couldn't have a best communicator as Dino Batista. He's gifted. He can transform disgrace in a gift. Well, he's capable to take you to travel to hell, and then you'll thank him. So he's the best communicator the ministry could have. And Dino, about CAD expressly stated that the Sea Coast Highway is a review of the UNTAC resolution that put apart from the Brazilian justice, that has been considered a crime to favor a few companies. So when everybody wants cabotage, and I've heard that the minister said that we do not want cabotage. So I've grew up, so I made my life with cabotage. I have no foreign operation. I must want cabotage, and I want it. But I would like to say that, everything has been discussed, has been analyzed. I've read for three times the technical note, and my conclusion is I've seen lots of Portuguese mistakes. On the contrary, Dino said there's no one line about the sectorization of cabotage that I agree, which I agree. Cabotage is a group of micro markets. Each kind of load has its dynamics, and the study do not take it into account. The only thing the study has is a collection of transcriptions, some studies, some old, and there are unanimous that the word is we need to have the centralization of the markets. I don't know why Brazil is going on the contrary. So I think we do not have studies upon this. And if we have studies, they're not publicized. And when we analyze the propositions for the Seacoast Highway, we can see that it's a homogeneous solution for this heterogeneous problem. We cannot believe that punctual solution will work for every problem. And I don't know why cabotage is the solution. So cabotage is growing 2 digits, lots of investments in the last years. Brazilian ships are not overloaded, and we must remember that the Seacoast Highway has no novelty regarding the foreign ships. 80% of the cabotage is attended by foreign ships. So the most part of the ships we can see within ANTAC the number of authorized freights. The 3 major cabotage companies that owns 100% of the container trade, they are owned by the 3 major world group and they control more than 1,200 ships currently. So consider the ANTAC regulation. So there's no barrier for the ships to operate in Brazil. In fact, they operate when they are passing by the Brazilian coast. So sometimes we're closing our eyes that, the sea coast highway is for the final user, and we haven't had the proper care to analyze the ship owners, so the ship owners' margins, because we established the prices for the Brazilian ships, and we operate with foreign ships. In bulk, for example, it is more evidenced, and it's been the object of some news. So the practice of fiscal evasion, this abuse in the transfer price from companies of the same group, over invoicing. So because we can't have the control of the trades abroad, and then unfortunately the Ministry of Infrastructure disregarded all of this. There's no mechanism in this new law. So we're talking basically about fight against commercial margin. And not to be repetitive, so we are lowering the barriers of entrance. So this is only for marketing. No one will freight hull ship in hull, and do remember, you always denied that it could happen. When you sent me the law project, you didn't know who put this in the text. When you're finishing the circularization. So the truth is you are ending the right-of-way of the national ship. For example, situations with no waiver for each travel. The 9432 allows this. Who does not allows is the ANTAC regulation to restrict competition. The 9432 states you may freight per traveler per time once you prove there's no Brazilian ship to attend. So there's no better measure, there's no better statement to protect the national ships. So to protect investments, let's do per ballast. Where's the study? Where's the payback study? You've been the president of the Director Council of the Merchant Navy. You know well the conditions. Most part of the ships built in Brazil are already paid. So you know how much each company paid for each ship, since the company headquarters buys in Brazil and it's cheaper. So to not be repetitive, even more repetitive, I may say, we do not find anywhere a study that fundaments what Dino Batista said. So Dino is a kind of metamorphosis. When we see the first speech from Dino Batista, so and according to the critics, he's been receiving, he's adapting his discourse, and then that's what I said when he takes you to a trip to hell and you thank him. So this whole freight, you can compete with the time freight based abroad. So you're telling that these loads will be in the hands of one or two, and how can you work? How can you compete with this cost differences? And just to finish, I think I'm out of time. So Dino, please do not tell that CAD is approving. So you're taking the caput of the assessment, and it's how a major part of people reads only the first lines and the last lines, and in the middle that's the tricky text. So CAD says that Seacoast Highway measured our market concentrate kind, and it's a review of the ANTAC resolution that was being rejected by the Brazilian justice, and I think I don't need to tell any further. So, and besides this, we're always here and to participate and at your disposal. Dino, can take into account these relevant issues stated by Abrahão. So regarding the timing, I think the inclusion of amendments now, I think there's no more possibility, because we've had the 5 Congress sessions after the limit, after the deadlines, and we've had 112 amendments. I think we do not have space for new amendments. Obviously, we have a pathway, a possibility to talk with the reporter. The reporter in charge may author his report. So we have some possibilities. And besides this, we have the Senate after the deputies. We have the senators, I think, but I don't think by amendments. Well, I think it's interesting. I would like to greet you all again, and thank you, Abrahão, for your compliments. And I could say likewise, because it's very interesting to debate with you, because you state very clearly your points, and I think we should take care of some points, some considerations, because when I talk about CAD made 2 technical notes. Both technical notes made an assessment that you called only caput, the first lines. I think you used this term, when the CAD assessed the global program, and this global assessment from CAD with this problem of the competition increase. But in both technical notes, CAD made this technical notes, and then also answered specific points about the law project. So when CAD makes an assessment of being a concentrator instrument, was specifically about the first item of the first paragraph of the fifth article of the law project number 491. It's just one element in the group of elements. I think CAD did this technical note answering a question about Congressman Pinato. And for that specific point, he says that that specific point may bring some incentive to market concentration, but, however, CAD was not asked for this, but they stated that in general, the program has some possibility for a competition incentive. And I agree with CAD in this point, because we cannot see the element punctually. We may see the bigger picture. So we need to be fair on this, because CAD assessed the specific point. As people asked CAD that if they about the obligation to have Brazilian ship. So the CAD said that it's not to Brazilian maritimes. It's not a concern on the public policy. So that's not a competition problem. So only we've had this concern about competition, and CAD assessed that the program in the bigger picture brings incentive to better competition, but we have other concern about the job posts for Brazilians, another concern to measures to mitigate the formation of fleet, so regarding the foreign fleets formation. And I would like to remind you that the instruments we've stated, they are general, but we also stated that we will have some regulations, specific regulations by market segment. Other element brought here is about the transference prices, a concern of us, fruit of lots of meetings with the Brazilian income tax body. We've got some complaints about lots of companies, and we talked with the Brazilian tax income, federal Brazilian tax income, and that it may happen in various other markets of the Brazilian economy, and it's part of the federal revenue body, Brazilian body, to act against this practice, but it's a daily routine. And just to finalize, you talked about the Brazilian ships that are already paid, but to cabotage, stricto sensu, excluding the oil. So we've had only 4 ships in Brazil in the last 10 years. So in these 4 ships, they are this boats, this bauxite boats or container boats. When we talk about the naval industry in Brazil, to cabotage, we have all 4 boats, and I think it's not fair to talk about this vessel specifically. I would like to greet you all, especially our lecturer, Dino, and Heitor, our mediator. It's an honor to exchange ideas with these important actors in the logistic field. So the 4199 law project, it has lots of measures, lots of suggestions, and to share with you, that's what we expect. My question is, I think it's more a suggestion that this law project, as I've understood, this is going towards the organized ports. So in our case, we have the Fortaleza region port, that is an organized port harbor with no cabotage operation. The 2 main ship owners are in Pecém, the second port, 60 kilometers from Fortaleza. And considering that the goal of the government, by the government, is to maximize the merchant, the load moving throughout the regions, and also a proposition to make feasible some terminals in the surroundings of the harbors. So my question is, or as my suggestion is, may the project involve the two kinds of harbors, two kinds of ports, or either organized ports or either private ports, would not repercute better, so more options of development. Has to do with organized ports, and I think we have this in the report of the Deputy Gorgel about these lessees. It may disappear, this article number 16, and nowadays, because in this we've already predicted in the new law project this possibility of temporary contracts and the leasing of some temporary areas, because so our writers, so the law elaborators, so we discussed this possibility, and because it's already predicted, so to establish temporary areas. And we are taking off from the Sea Coast Highway project. So this moving towards the organizing ports, and differentiating. And we've been talking to some actors, trying to attract more cabotage. If we're going to incentivize cabotage, so we will act to bring together this new merchant, new loads to our terminals. In the same way, we are acknowledging the organized ports like Paranaguá, an example, where they are acting towards the differentiated fees for cabotage. They're already thinking about it. So the project had this differentiation element, but it may disappear. And we see with good eyes both possibilities. What is possible to incentive the port area will do. So you mean the possibility to think about a terminal in the surroundings of a non-organized port? In case of Pecém port, we may dream about to have these customs incentives, right? Even in a temporary way. Well, to have these customs in this temporary facility is somehow complicated. There is a decree that I don't remember right now, but I remember the 670 article number 670 that made talk that the cabotage must not be in the customs area, although the federal revenue body gives a special permission. So our concern in the Sea Coast Highway is not about this customs area, because customs area, they bother the cabotage operations, And we noticed that we had an amendment that proposes exactly to eliminate this article number 670 to allow that cabotage loads could access the customs areas. And that would be interesting because when we talk about different loads together, we're talking about reduction of costs. It would be a win-win situation. We have instruments of information technology that would facilitate a lot of virtual segregation of these loads for cabotage and those for long travel. I don't think it would be necessary this physical segregation, but yes, new terminals in the surroundings of the organized ports, whether for cabotage or for non-cabotage. I think these temporary facilities are allowed due to these changes in the 1447 law. So thank you for the clearances. Now, pass the floor to Dr. Carlos Alberto. So good evening, everyone. In these 15 years, so the Expolog cherishes Dino, Batista, and we're very happy to discuss the Sea Coast Highway Law Project. So we've chosen this format for 1 hour and a half to give you more time to show us other themes, other thematics. And since Expolog is a multimodal event regarding logistics, I would like you to talk about the Sea Coast Highway vision and the cabotage segmentation. So cabotage is a huge success. There's it is very well established, but but cabotage nowadays, I've been advocating for cabotage in the last 20 years. So the special loads, general loads, the steel related loads, they have a need to be agile and in the merchant flow. So when you talk that cabotage is like a bus transportation, so a public transportation line, a bus line, that is not derogatory, because everyone wants to plan. So we have great expectations regarding the Sea Coast Highway project, to this to the movement of merchants, steel related, also the eolic, for example, parts. So the wind farm parts are in our roads and highways. They should be on the sea. So the cellulose and paper coils, and lots of general merchants, general loads. If we had good regulation to explore, so the general loads, project loads, and the loads can mention with an initiative 4 or 5 years ago, and it didn't even being a relevant ship owner. So we have this event of ours, a multi-modal event with 15 years. So would like to understand your idea of regulation in these other markets, roll-off or general loads. Have a complaint from load, why these kind of loads are out of cabotage, because of lack of regularity. So the Brazilian navigation company will be a great trader to flexibilize our merchants. Well, what can we do? to have more services and more regularity. That's general loads, not containered loads. Containers are a huge success, but when you said so we have a cabotage in Espírito Santo, for example, but with other kinds of cargo, don't have they consolidated, and cabotage as we see in Korea, in a very strong way. So since you have this opportunity here, could you talk about your ideas about cabotage, segmented cabotage, general and wind power and special and roll-on, roll-off, whether cars or equipment, they are produced in the south of Brazil, taken to the northeast with a car, with a big truck. They could be transported by cabotage. And I would like you to give you this opportunity to talk about it in this multimodal event that is call your attention to our container, because you have today the container cargo, the cabotage container cargo, and if we can attract one company more, it would be spectacular. So the market of cargo container is very concentrated. You need to have scale to give sustainability for lines, and you told it's like a bus line, so you can't create a bus line with one bus. So you need 4, 5 ships. You need a small fleet to give you a regularity, to establish the scales in your port. So, but that's what we call the big container strategy. We have a discussion going in this sense where you need a very segmented regulation for the small container. That's the possibility that we're talking about. So, talking with companies, that's a possibility that will be raised with the Sea Coast Highway to have smaller ships performing a more close transportation to the final client, more adapted to their timing. So obviously we've had a start of container operation in Rio de Janeiro, for example, very specific, oil-specific container operation. But we understand that we have the possibility to broaden the container ships, so ships with less than 1,000 TEU, 1,000 TEUs, that will bring some capillarity, some flexibility, a much bigger flexibility to cabotage. So the instruments we thought to the Sea Coast Highway are very, very bind to the market thing. So obviously there's no much sense talking about, so the long-term contract is for bauxite and oil, maybe for salt. I don't know if it would work. The special cabotage operation is for this small container. So it wouldn't make sense to state in the law text to let this specifically defined. So we let it open, thinking about each player in the market will receive, will approach in the best way those items in the article number 5 of the Sea Coast Highway Law Project. But it's clear that cabotage operations, so the regulations upon the cabotage operations will consider this segmentation you're talking about, because certainly we will make possible that the companies to test the market and to establish without investing on fleets. You mentioned Aliança Navegação, that it's part of a huge corporation and didn't make it to transport this wind power parts, because we've had competition, and in equal competition. Abrahão told us about this, and so Aliança forgot about that project cargo. So we must the project cargo segment. So we must create for each market segment a instrument, and for these segments where we don't have a consolidation of the service provision, we are bringing a special alteration of cabotage. You talked about RO. We don't have any national flag RO operation. With the Sea Coast Highway, I would ask to perform a RO service, and I will not have to make any investment. And if one wants to enter this market, it's to operate so the companies, they decide, no, I won't do that. I will keep irregular between commas, so not going against any rule, but in this irregularity in terms of frequency. So, and they will regulate, they will comply with when necessary. So the cabotage operations, the regulation of this special cabotage operation, what is cargo, non-existent route, and before to publish as the decree, we must bring to the market to gather opinions and to act with to deal with each segment in an adequate way, to allow companies to enter in the market, to establish in the market in each of these segments you've mentioned, and from that point, decide or not, time will tell, to create a new new structure to haul operations. That was our operation, to create instruments that could be specific, and this specification to become a regular rule. And for this regulation, we must talk to the sectors. I don't know the exact instrument, the public consultation. So the virtual world brings us this facility to perform a public consultation, public survey with all the stakeholders. But I thank you for your question. Okay, now Dr. Luis Fernando representing BAC. It's a pleasure to BAC to be an Expolog, to have Dino as our lecturer. So Expolog is a forum, it's a multimodal forum, and so small big companies. We have space for everybody. Cabotage wood or steel coils. And regarding the lecture of Dr. Dino and the law project, we from BACI, we have three major critics. And the first one, Dr. Dino already know, but I will insist. The Seacoast Highway sold to the society, shown to the society, to the users, that would bring a cost differential, so less costs. So using the foreign flag ship. So they told us about this, but they forgot to tell that we would have a Brazilian cost on it. 2/3 of Brazilian maritime workers. We don't have nothing against the Brazilian maritime workers. They are very welcome, but they are high-cost workers. It will be a failure to the government, a failure to the reporter presenting this law project. So the program must be adjusted. So the labor issues must be attacked to have serious cost reductions. So the second point, Dr. Dino told us, and I see the government going right and left randomly. So if the government zeroed the import tax to have more navigation companies, and now in the law project it's been open to have a Brazilian company without any ship. So we want to have navigation companies, or we want to have brokers, so companies that operate without their own ships. So this is a fundamental, dramatic issue. And third thing, I think, Dr. Dino, so people from the northeastern region, Brazil, so the question of FREM, it's not secondary. From 8th January 2022, the cargo from the origin and destination in the northeastern region, they will pay an extra tax fee. So that's no secondary. So please allow me to repeat these my crucial disagreement points. How can we establish law projects that would incentivize cabotage, incentive to the cabotage users? It's not preserved. So Dr. Heitor, Dr. Dino, these are the points we are debating with the government, with the congressmen, and we are very concerned because since February last year, the first meeting, and since February 2019, we've had our investments frozen, whether for the small, medium, or big companies. This is very, very worrying. We cannot let cabotage to fall in this descendant curve. So we are very proud of our 10% of growth, but if we do not adopt urgent measures for the project to be concluded, to be regulated, so otherwise it will be very dangerous for the whole sector. So just complementing Luis Fernando's intervention, these points are very common to the productive sector. The National Confederation of Industries is corroborating these points. And since we are here, I would like to know that if internally in the federal government or in the Ministry of Agriculture, there's an answer for these critical points. Well, I thank you, Luis Fernando Rezano, for your question. I know these points are reiteratedly mentioned by Abac. I would like to focus on two of them. The first of them is the issue about a frame, and I'm sorry if I minimize the importance, but I know it's fundamental. But just remind you that the non-incidence of a frame for cargo with origin and or destination in the north and northeast regions of Brazil is fundamental and made feasible in cabotage or in the countryside navigation. The double hull, for example, for fuel transportation in Amazonia, and a great part of our bulk convoy transportation or agriculture transportation. It's feasible because of this instrument of non-incidence of the frame in the north or northeast. I think this is the reason this theme deserved, if I'm not mistaken, 7 amendments requesting a delay until 5 years. And here, just reminding you that is respecting some a legal determination. This kind of tax incentive may be delayed only for 5 years. We understand. Inside the Ministry of Agriculture, we understand this is fundamental. So navigation around the world deserves and receives incentives because navigation brings what we call externalities. So a benefit for the society when a private investor adopts cabotage. It's this adoption of cabotage from a private brings lots of benefits of good externalities, and I think it's fundamental this delay and we've been talking about it, and it's fundamental to have the National Industry Confederation of the CNA, also from FPA. We have the support from various segments for this delay in this prorogation of the incentive. We know extension, prolongation of this. We have all the congressmen, senators involved towards the need of this extension, this incentive, fiscal incentive extension. And the other point regarding tripulation, this is a big concern of ours. So this sea coast highway will be effective only. So the sea coast highway is in this hypothesis of the time freight agreements. We offer the private to not to have this random behavior through circularization. We offer the private sector ships lower costs. In an exchange, we want more regularity. So the navigation company will leave circularization and will enable the sea coast highway if they understand they have justified operational cost reduction. And the greatest concern is if we have 2/3 of Brazilian maritime workers, this incentive will really exist because we have a huge doubt about that bound of the maritime worker with the flag of origin. We have legal insecurities about it. And besides this doubt, there is a certainty that the Brazilian maritime worker, they have a work scale. It's important for the Brazilian maritime worker with this labor regulation about the time of work, about the shifts, so that makes the work more makes the work safer. Okay, but it's an element of cost. If we could compare the Brazilian labor regulations comparing to the Panama workers, I don't know if they have regulations, we would not be talking about this. So it's a concern of us. It's a concern about the generation of job posts for Brazilian. It's been said here that a significant part, mostly in bulk, is done with the time freight contracts. And in these ships, it's very limited, the application of the RN06 from the Immigration National Council. And we have too few Brazilian working in these ships, and if we achieve companies to adopt the Sea-Coast Highway, we immediately will have that percentage of Brazilian workers navigating, effectively navigating by our coast. So if we have 1/5 or 2/3, so every number, so it's a guarantee of job post creation for Brazilians. But if we do not assure the cost reduction, companies will search for circularization, and in this circularization process, with the other companies contracted, will not have Brazilians working. So the status quo maintenance is not good for Brazilian maritime workers. And if the situation of this percentage and the effectiveness of the program, it will be a lose-lose situation. And I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to bring this debate that I think must be done not only inside government, or the congressmen are debating about it, but also amongst the maritime workers. Because if it makes sense to fight for the 2/3, if this will it will compromise the access of all the maritime workers to a market that is to achieve. So for the sake of time, let's pass the floor to Dr. Host. So good evening. So it's very interesting. I'd like to thank you for the invitation. It's a nice opportunity to listen to you, to listen about all these problems, all these policies, issues from the government. As a foreign man, I would like to observe that I believe a lot in this policy about cabotage, because it will open the access to the markets. So we as a port, we are very interested to improve the access to the markets. It's interesting to compare this policy to what is happening in Europe. They have the same problems to implement these highways, the sea highways in Europe. So they have the same issues to address. And I would like only to summarize this case, because first of all, the Brazilian economy will grow and will have problems with the logistics capacity. So it's necessary to create new ways, more efficient ways, for example, cabotage. And it will bring efficiency, but not only efficiency, because the customer will choose between the road transportation, truck transportation, or the maritime transportation with a ship, because some cargo must go quickly, other cargo may delay a little bit, so it's an open market. Port is an part of the logistic chain, so I see other policies in the Brazilian government, also the policies of the who have great diversity job posts have more job posts in the ports, in the rail stations, and all the companies part of the chain. And also the companies will be more local and to be different travel for 500 kilometers and going and back and forth, but we'll have other small travel, small distance workers. My question is how this new policy is connected with the Rio de Janeiro highways, sea highways, and also how this policy is connected to railways, because without this bond, it will not work. I think it will be difficult to this policy work without the railway connection. And Brazil has a lot of small ports, and so infrastructure, it exists. It's not the ideal, but we do not have this level field of game. So we have private, we have public ports of different rules, and I see that it's much more difficult to establish a fair competition because we have totally different regulations and rules about the environment as well. And I know, so we have the process of making these ports private, but we're halfway. But may we arrive there, quickly or not? So, what's your opinion with seeing this bigger picture? What's your vision for Brazil? So, thank you, Mr. Hulst, for your vision of a foreign man. I think it's fundamental what you said about the social and environmental impacts. It's interesting in all debates we have in Brazil. We try to justify, I think, the small incentive for the aquatic transportation. We struggle to justify it, and when we see in Europe, so the incentive programs are much bigger. So you have actually policies, transportation policies, so the Green Book or of the European transportation, bringing this, raising this in a very clear way, that the cost must consider externalities, and then the incentives are justified. So the aquatic transportation brings not only direct job posts, but indirect job posts. So when we have the aquatic transportation bringing much more advantages to reduce the Brazilian costs, so you'll have a wide development, growth, economic growth, including for the truck drivers, as we've mentioned. And I agree with you, we must be concerned to the linkage to amongst the navigation, countryside navigation, railway structure, and cabotage, to have a very complex multimodal structure. So, and the other thing is, it doesn't make sense to think about the navigation in the countryside without recovering the highways, the Brazilian highways. For example, the 163, the so-called BR 163, and also the other linking to Porto Velho, linking to the port of Pecém, the so-called Trans-Northeastern. I worked a lot in this Trans-Northeastern railway project. I'm more a road engineer than an aquatic engineer. I am multimodal, and I like a lot all these projects being finalized. So it's fundamental to renew, to recover the state of São Paulo, to recover the road network in the highway system. So we are concerned about the short-term identification of the specific bottlenecks, linking the transport, the modals, all the modals, so railway, rail, road, and cabotage, and also a long-term planning with this national logistics plan. I don't know if they will finalize this Brazilian logistics plan by the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021, but we're very close to this study publication that will be fundamental to guide what we already started inside the infrastructure ministry, that are the sectorial plans. So the Brazilian National Logistics Plan, identifying the greatest flows inside Brazil, and from this strategic vision, the sectorial plannings for each model of transportation. And we started with for people from the aerial transportation, they are ahead. We have also the road network people ahead. We from the aquatic, but we are conscious about it. We are aware about it. And about this issue, about the leveled field of game, we need to to make some changes in the regulations. So, and that's not much of my audience. So we have other directors much more ahead than me. We have the Department of Modernization and Management of Ports, bringing lots of discussions to bring more efficiency to the organized ports, or in the, as it possible, equalization between the terminal types, the different terminal types. We know about the challenges. We have people from the organized ports talking. These people from the TUPs, they have the competitiveness advantage, and people from the TUP, they tell the organized ports they have much more investment advantages, localization, but it's truly something that we need to balance. That is a concern from the Secretary of Ports of Aquatic Transportation. But we have critical discussions. One of these are access to the terminals, so the railway access or the road access, how to make feasible the railways to private terminals. Can we invest public money for this kind of access? So we have this concerning as well, but it's not simple. So thank you. So we have a saying that Rome has not been made in one day. So I'm sure it will work. I'm very confident on this. So Professor Gustavo Costa, in a very summarized way. So thank you. So to be in the end of the line is always complicated. So it's a pleasure to be again here. And he's accepting 16 amendments. And it doesn't change a lot from what's being presented from the government. So as Salomão said, lots of critics, and Luis Fernando Rezano, and these critics will be there to be discussed in the Senate. But I would like to show you some insights. Well, I agree with you, because people must be very unaware about logistics to criticize cabotage. Well, I've been working in this sector and for many years, and I am an academic as well. And it's important to see this critic about the market concentration. We'll have always market concentration, and we have an industry with intensive capital, not only in the maritime sector. Any intensive capital sector, in time, we get to have few players in the market. So because of this, we have these barriers of entrance, and trying to, decrease these barriers of entrance in this law project with this freight contracts possibility. But I have a question about the attractiveness of cabotage for new players. I talked a lot about it in the UNTAC Association, and I would like to ask you a very special claim to you, and to make cabotage more attractive. So we are talking about a market of what size? We're always trying to speculate about the market size, and since we are in the modern world using big data, data mining, or artificial intelligence, or we have a database nowadays, but these data are not work properly to tell that the transportation from A to B must be done by cabotage. Since we have a limit, we have a threshold to obey regarding the competitor. For example, autonomous low cargo transportation, more than 700,000 transporters, cargo operation 435. So these are the competitors. These thousands of operators are the competitors with the three companies of cabotage we have nowadays. It's also the aquatic transportation market started to be ruled and regulated a few years ago, and we have a limit on how to attract new players, new companies for a market we do not map properly in all the studies. In all studies, we must consider a threshold, upper threshold. There is a limit of income, and we also have the competitors from the road network, and we have ship owners, foreign ship owners, and we have all these competitors. This database exists, so we have these electronic data available in the Treasury Secretariats of each state. So I reiterate this claim to have more data to study. And so since we know this actual flow of cargo, even past flows, even past data, so we need to have a single database to modulate all the law projects, the future amendments, based on an existent database. Another point, so now my question. So we are really surprised by the developments towards infrastructure in this country. So we've had some achievements in the President Dilma's term, but we are improving, and all these investments are changing the reality on logistics in our country. So may we may create, develop a market for cabotage, or we can create a market of cabotage. So the highway, the 163 highway, has been made by the grains transportation, but we can create an alternative aquatic transportation way that would be cheaper. So this logistics network changing will impact what is we know as the Sea Coast Highway. So it's a good thing, because the companies will have to be more competitive. My question is very simple. And since August, we are discussing this law project. Even here, even the substitute presented by the Congressman Gurgel, we have lots of things to regulate and to write. Do you have people working on this? Because after the mayor's, the city hall's election, so it will be approved in February, be approved in the Senate, we must start working. So how much time we'll have for all these regulations? So please give us a time frame. If Senate approves in February, so in practice, when we'll have something concrete to the companies to work on? So that's a very good question, right, Gustavo? So that's the best I could do, since the other questions have been already made. So this question of yours, will get me worried, because you're right. So the time is ahead of us, and we are working on this regulation, I think, from 3 months, I think, since we delivered the law, the point, which of these points, which of those points had the chance to be altered in the National Congress, and which would be the importance of that item. And from this, we've chosen the points we would attack first, and we're trying to address the issues like the long-term contracts and the segments of cabotage that the percentage based on ballast, for example, and we are working on all of this. The ideal thing would be our goal be, so since we have the law project as an actual law, and then we will put this to the civil society to debate. So since it's approved, so the rules are these, and these are the rules. So, and the time frame you're asking, I think is you're correct, and we think we can deal, since it is decreed and transformed into law, an effective law. So some things we could start to debate already, but we have no official means. We cannot present a possible regulation for a law that doesn't exist yet. And so we're getting everything prepared. So since the law project is effectively a law, and we can start the works towards regulation. And about the first thing you told us, so the actions we are performing inside the ministry. The DTE is going to what you told, the data. We are trying to get data in the cloud, data to create information and knowledge. And so that's not simple, but it's something we've been working on for some years. So we tried 6 years ago to establish a project that included the tags in the trucks, for example, RFID, for example, in products and others. So we have technologies that allow us to use big data. We do not have access to it exactly because you told what you told us. We have a lot of precaution. We have tax confidentiality, commercial confidentiality. Well, we understand that we have ways secure in a safe way, not exposing private data, giving us a better vision, more detailed vision. So we have some starting use for this data is not what the ministry planned. So the DTE will be determinant for this, to have a more dense cloud. But we'll have a lot to develop in order to, nowadays technology would tell us how much, for example, how many bottles of beer leave São Paulo and go into a specific state in Brazil. So, and we have lots of consultings. The data infrastructure is simpler, but we have also those confidentiality products. But yes, so this regulation upon data, it complicates a little bit things, but we need to know what's the origin, what's the destination, the model, the weight of the cargo. So it's only this, not what kind of cargo. So just to have the tons, data about the tons, about the weight, only this. I would like only to finalize talking about the ports. Last time I've been at Pecém in Ceará. I told people to give a suggestion to try to eliminate the ICMS tax from Pecém to Fortaleza. It's inter-municipality transportage. For example, cabotage is punished, So cabotage can be an option for inter-municipality transportation. So inside the state, they may charge only the ISS, the so-called ISS, and not the ICMS. That's it. Well, the Pecém port is a terminal of private use. We have the Rotterdam private operator. Well, just finalizing, because of our time, Miguel Andrade, please, from the Docas Company of Ceará. Thank you all. I'd like to greet all the present, all the panelists, all the participants here. I would like to perform a question. So since I represent a port authority and the port of Mucuripe in Fortaleza, Ceará, I would like to ask government, if the government is aware about the investments needed in the port infrastructure in order to each port in each region of our country may receive this additional demand that will be raised with the sea coast highway. So the piers, access, and the berth, and all the access for all the ships in the docks of all the ports. So excellent question, a new concern. I think these are interesting things stated by the truck drivers. Truck drivers said you will have a share of our markets. Well, we'll have an increase of our trips to attend cabotage. But what about the road network access for more trucks? What about the facilities, adequate facilities for the truck drivers to be well received in the terminals? We have complaints and claims, for example, lack of bathroom to service truck drivers. So we have concern. We are worried about from the side of the ports, the seaside, but we have also we are also worried in the land side. We must be prepared in both sides, and I would say that unfortunately it will be a problem. It will be a problem for some time, but a low importance problem, since in the first moment the pressure the cabotage will create upon these structures will be low, will be of minor importance. But we are planning strategic and tactic and operational planning. So the national and the sectorial plannings are considering these impacts that cabotage may, and we hope it brings. We have some challenges in this sense, Mr. Miguel. That is a definition that depends on the private, for example, on how we'll have the design of this logistics. So we have lots of studies about it. If we have a design of one or two ports that not only the terminal, but all the public administration. If we have a port operation more efficient and less red tape, we can make feasible ships, vessels of hundreds of thousands of TEUs that do not depend the great deep or deepness or the great channels for navigation. Well, this design of the maritime logistics depends on various factors: the hub ports, the red tape in the terminals, and the ideal scenario would be some concentration in some place and the cabotage as a feeder, and maybe with smaller ships than the 5,000 TEUs that are currently working in the Brazilian cabotage. And also, as a hypothesis, if we get a very big operational efficiency, we can institute cabotage, a hub only for cabotage. So we'll have hubs for long courses and hubs for cabotage, and a greater capillarity of smaller vessels. Every variable of this, every of these variables are being considered and assessed in the operational planning of the port system. So in this moment, considering also the connection of the whole road networks and road and rail networks to identify the bottlenecks and to address them. Thank you very much. Well, I think we are really out of time. So we are almost being we're really without time. So all the advancements are significant. The new aquatic transportation policy is very important for our country, and we're trying to insert all the enhancements that the law may bring and benefit of our country. So we have these final remarks of Dr. Dino Batista, thanking him for his goodwill and for his technical expertise that honors us. Well, I am the one who thanks, and I will thank you in general, not to forget any of you. I'd like to thank all the audience that is following us and that will watch our debate, and mainly to thank Expolog for this opportunity. I think this kind of event makes all our projects from infrastructure ministry to be bigger, and I hope we have an environment and a framework to promote the cabotage development, because it will be good to Brazil. And have a good night. I am at your disposal, Mr. Heitor, Studart, every time Expolog invite us. So thank you all. Thank you very much. Have a good night.